Hello everybody all at once. I want to offer my master plan for the city of Oakland, aka Oakland 2.0, and this is a no-holds-barred, have everything you want kind of plan for Oakland. And I can't think of a city that is really more deserving of getting the finest treatment, and there really isn't a city that has greater potential and a greater legacy. So, cars, homicide, the Port of Oakland, the stripping of old-growth trees from the hills, homicide, homelessness, bike lanes, cars. So, why don't we begin with the issue of cars? There are few things that have a greater impact on the quality of life in a great city such as Oakland than the extraordinarily ruinous planning around transportation and the use of heavy combustion cars. I'm suggesting that we apply harm reduction methods across the board in order to uplift Oakland. But in order to apply harm reduction to cars in Oakland, we need to define what the harms are. As a bike rider in the city of Oakland, it's very clear that there's a war on the streets of Oakland every day between people who are inside heavy combustion cars and the people who are walking or riding bikes. And the city is designed to instigate a constant state of warfare between the citizens of Oakland and each other. And if you're doing a harm-benefit analysis of the situation with cars, I think it's important to realize that you need to measure three things, three negative indicators. I call it the DHS. Divisiveness, hazing, and stress. And I need to kind of drill down into particulars here, because it really does pertain to the master plan for Oakland. If we can deal with the issues of harm reduction and cars, we can handle anything. So, right now, you can analyze the interaction between a person in a heavy combustion vehicle and a person on a bicycle. When the person in the heavy combustion vehicle approaches within a certain radius of the person on the bicycle, the speed of that vehicle has a certain reaction time, and once it gets to a certain short distance, the reaction time is so low that the person on the bike no longer has control over their own safety if the person in the car does something wrong. So there's many such interactions every day for any one person on a bicycle where they enter into these zones of fear of their personal safety being threatened because they're in that radius of reaction time where there is a gross and fundamental imbalance of power constantly being foisted on the bike rider, in this case, where an encounter within the radius of reaction time with a heavy combustion vehicle means a potential threat to their life and grievous bodily harm, whereas the presence of the person on a bicycle to the person inside the heavy combustion vehicle presents zero threat of bodily harm and death. So there is the most extreme imbalance of power that you could have, where a person on one side of the situation has a capacity to create death or severe bodily harm, and the person on the other side of the interaction has zero capacity to cause death or bodily harm. And that imbalance of power is built into the city planning of Oakland and every other city, which gives dominance and primacy to heavy combustion vehicles and makes people who choose bicycle transportation and travel on foot, they are made into second-class citizens who are constantly put into this zone of threat. And what that does is it increases these three negative indicators: divisiveness, hazing, and stress. So the urban planning system is designed virtually to maximize the penetration of heavy combustion vehicles into every conceivable area of the commons. Sidewalks, bike lanes, the parks, every square inch of the city is subject to the invasion of heavy combustion vehicles. So, obviously in Oakland 2.0, we're practicing harm reduction, and we're recognizing the harms associated with that degree of heavy vehicular penetration into the commons. And we measure the harms accordingly. And divisiveness, hazing, and stress have to be measured in every single instance that it occurs, because it has a monetary value. We can come up with a dollar value for the stress that a person feels when their life is threatened and their body is harmed or threatened with harm. And it causes divisiveness because we're constantly put into a situation where another person is threatening us, and that makes me feel that that person is threatening me, and therefore I should feel bad about that person and angry at that person, and divisiveness ensues. Hazing. Our whole society is based on the Illuminati controlling everything from the top, and there's a thumping order from the top that cascades downward. Well, if you have a car and you're momentarily in a force superior relationship with people on foot around you, then you're playing your part for the Illuminati by being, for that moment, the oppressor, the hazer, the one who's, for no reason at all, could just kill, and is constantly threatening extreme harm just to travel across town and get groceries. So the power imbalance of the whole system is recapitulated in this petty drama of forcing heavy combustion vehicles into close proximity with people on foot in the heart of the inner city, in all the most valued parts of the commons. So this over-encroachment by vehicles has to stop. It has to be rolled back. It has to be systematically reversed. I don't want my city of Oakland over-penetrated by combustion vehicles. And in Oakland 2.0, we're setting apart our most sacred parts of the city and removing the big, heavy cars from them, except emergency vehicles and all that. But not for the random use to get across town or to go have your convenience. No, we're retaking the commons. Sections of Oakland are being put back into a sacred space, and all these heavy vehicles will be banished from those areas. So imagine that. Breathe a sigh of relief for all the new open space for true human habitation in the city of Oakland. So, the current bike lane system in Oakland is worse than a joke. It's essentially a multi-use lane where people on bicycles can take their chances. And it gives the illusion of safety, which just makes it all the worse because it might tempt people to actually use it. So I use the sidewalk to ride my bike around town as much as I possibly can, because the current system is grossly unfair and unsafe to people on foot and people on bike and people who use light electric vehicles. And we want, in Oakland 2.0, to ramp up the use of less harmful transportation. And that means light electric vehicles, e-bikes, and small enclosed electric vehicles and the like are going to gain favor and gradually replace most of the vehicle trips that happen in the inner city don't require a multiple ton, ultra heavy, expensive to fix steamroller that crushes unprotected human bodies. It's just a system that was intentionally designed by the Illuminati to constantly impose a system of divisiveness, hazing, and stress. Because again, just to repeat, forcing people through city planning into constant encounters between lethal heavy combustion vehicles and vulnerable people on bike and on foot creates 100% power imbalance in every circumstance and creates stress, not just for the person whose life is being threatened by the big car, but by the person driving who's constantly put in the position of like, who do I try not to murder today just to get across town? You shouldn't have to be thinking even in your subconscious about the possibility of murdering people just to move your multi-ton vehicle through human bodies in space. It is an intentionally destructive system, and we need to intentionally reverse it, change it, transform it. Cars, 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 fucking cars, 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 cars. Enough. Another one of the big solutions with cars, other than using harm reduction to increase the number of light electric vehicles and have bike lanes that are physically protected from the cars, and whole sections of the city where cars are not permitted. So there's no chance of negative interactions between heavy combustion vehicles and everybody else in those sacred and most protected parts of the city. And so one of the sacred and protected parts of the city, let's name where they should be. Obviously, Lakeshore Grand, and Broadway and 51st. Those two areas we could start with as pilot projects. Both of those areas need elevated parks over the street intersection so that pedestrians can, and light electric vehicles and bicycles can walk and make their way over the traffic and never even have to touch, deal, or encounter the heavy vehicles at all, which will be under the park, under the ground where the people are. So we're going to have multiple elevated parks in the city of Oakland. And the first one, the biggest one, is at the Lakeshore Grand, because that is really the most congenial, richest, greatest part of Oakland, and one of the great destination spots is the arcades, or rather the pergola at Trestle Glen and Wildwood Creek Inlet. And there's currently an aeration fountain there, and what I would recommend in Oakland 2.0 is that we create an elevated park over Highway 580 that links Grand Lakeshore with the lake and enables complete passage of wildlife and humans over the traffic. And the great destination, in addition to this elevated park, is an enhanced amenities at Lake Merritt, so that instead of just having this one aeration fountain with no lights in or on or around it, we enhance this aspect of the garland of lights around Lake Merritt and have a symphony of light where there's water features and robotic computer-controlled fountains and light systems in Lake Merritt that are helping to aerate the lake. But also we'll have live music and recorded music and beautiful, wonderful music playing while these light shows are happening on Lake Merritt, and the wonderful, beautiful fountains or making beautiful designs and colors. And the Symphony of Light will also be accompanied by Rock in the Lake, which is another destination feature of the city of Oakland, where local bands float on an automated electric barge around Lake Merritt, hitting 4 the major spots: the Wildwood Creek, the bandstand, the boathouse, and the Oakland Museum. And the barge stops at each one of these stations, plays a few songs, and then it floats on to the next station. People could walk and follow the band as it plays. And the band is on a barge that is made to resemble a kind of a big fake rock that gives the band a protection from the sunlight and gives the appearance of literally this sculpted rock floating in Lake Merritt. Hence the term Rock in the Lake. So the Symphony of Lights, Rock in the Lake, is an exaltation, elevation of Lake Merritt and the Grand Lakeshore Elevated Parkway as global destination spots. And you add the Fairyland, and we're going to elevate the primary arteries of Oakland, especially the following: Redwood Road. We're going to have bus service and sacred nature shrines in Redwood Park. One of the shrines is going to commemorate all the old-growth redwood trees that were cut down in the East Bay Hills. We're going to have a Vietnam memorial, as it were, for all the destroyed trees. And we're going to have positive nature shrines and all kinds of shrines in and around Redwood Park. And we're going to make Redwood Park a great local destination and a great global destination. And that means that every different kind of positive transportation service is going to be going not just up to Merritt College for God's sake, but all the way up the hill to Redwood Park all day and all night. We're going to make Redwood Park a exalted urban nature destination. And Redwood Road is going to have art and sculptures and public features on it to help draw people up the hill to the park and remember that this is the greatest of all urban parks in America. And it should be celebrated. It should be leveraged as a tourist attraction. It should be exalted as a sacred and spiritual place. We need to rebond with the local Ohlone people and draw them back into a visibility in local cultural life in the East Bay. We need to build the Global Cooperative Forum's first physical center in Oakland and have a central dome that has 2 layers of images, sacred images. The top layer is all the true spiritual masters, and the lower layer is the Kshatriyas and the true warriors. So the renunciates and the Kshatriyas. We will have a homicide reduction plan in place to reduce Oakland homicides, as I've already rolled out that portion, by 90% in 10 years. The Global Cooperative Forum must be known as a practical institution which helped create a miracle of violence and homicide reduction in the city of Oakland, and helped to create pilot programs for sustainable bionomies and arc habitats in the city of Oakland. And the Global Cooperative Forum Center itself, in addition to having the circular temple, would have arc habitat style self-sustainability technologies built in. So Rock in the Lake and the 24-hour youth multiplex and true harm reduction of all alcohol sales and unhealthy food sales in the city of Oakland. We're going to make Oakland a beacon of harm reduction so that every downstream harm to health and society caused by alcohol sales in clubs and bars and restaurants and in every store will be paid by the people who are making profits and consuming those goods. Harm reduction will be practiced to the point where we take huge amounts of money to make all ages clubs where alcohol isn't served, and the city makes sure that for every 10,000 citizens there is a certain number of live all ages entertainment venue seats per capita, that this has to be measured and maintained and regulated. We need a certain amount of support for the local arts and music scene, for the nightlife, and for all ages. It has to be measured, and it has to be in place such that we have a thriving, unstoppable live music scene with many all ages venues. Oakland needs to have a public bank. We need to sever ties with any of the Illuminati and cabal private banking forces in the city of Oakland, including through the Port of Oakland. We need to occupy the Port of Oakland and retake parts of the coastline of Oakland away from the port and make it available for wildlife and human recreational use again. We need to stop all human trafficking and drug trafficking that's going through the Port of Oakland. We need full transparency and sunshine, and we need balance. The port can't just own all that property and do nefarious dealings. The port needs to stop all of its toxic behaviors. It needs to be at the service of nature and at the service of the citizens of Oakland, or get the fuck out. No one has a right to make profit in the city of Oakland unless they are doing right by the people and the environment of Oakland. We're going to occupy the Port of Oakland until we have natural access to our coast of Oakland. And we're going to use the commons to showcase the best and brightest of our artists. So the Bart Commons, the Trader Joe's Commons are going to be built out and exalted so that at least 50% of all the advertising space is given over for the free use of local artists. So we want to see the best local painters currently living and from every previous decade in the Bay Area constantly in our face, constantly reminded, constantly educated, constantly attracted to the extraordinary art legacy of painting in the Bay Area, and certainly the East Bay in particular. And so we want the commons to be given over to positive poetry and uplifting messages, and not just crass corporate Illuminati-based advertising anymore. We're reclaiming the commons of Oakland, and we're making it an exalted destination for world travelers, the greatest example of urban regeneration in modern times, and a center of culture and art, a center of world and global peace through the Global Cooperative Forum, and a truly attractive, humane place to live, where getting around and transportation involves very little stress, very little hazing, and very little divisiveness. Beginning and end of part 1 of Oakland 2.0.